Welcome to Smart Home Tidbits, where Sarah and John, your AI guides, summarize the latest in smart living, keeping you informed and inspired in just minutes. Let's dive in.
All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into the world of Matter and Thread.
Two very exciting technologies that are kind of shaking things up a little bit in the smart home world.
Yeah, and they're kind of intertwined, and I think a lot of people are a bit confused about, the differences, the similarities,
Right.
where they came from, all of that. So we're going to get into all of that.
Absolutely, yeah. There's been a lot of hype.
And we're going to try to break it down a little bit based on some of the research that we've been doing.
Yeah.
A lot of information out there.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to start with a little bit of the history. Can you maybe take us back to how this whole thing got started?
Yeah. So, Thread actually came about, back in, I think, around 2014, 2015.
Okay.
When Silicon Labs and ARM and NXP, they kind of got together to form the Thread group. And what they were trying to do was overcome some of the limitations of Zigbee.
Right, because Zigbee was kind of the main player at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Zigbee was very popular. It was everywhere, but it did have its limitations.
So what were the big issues with Zigbee?
So Zigbee, it used, a limited IP address space. So as we get more and more devices in the smart home, that was becoming a problem. And it also relied heavily on things like routers and gateways and converters and things like that.
Okay.
Which could be a bit of a headache.
Yeah. I mean, we all had to deal with that with the dongles and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay. So they decided, okay, we need something better.
Something better, yeah.
So Thread came about. And then there was this whole other layer of confusion because there were these terms like ... and CHIP floating around.
Yeah, the name game.
It's like a spy novel or something.
Absolutely, yeah. So ... actually came first, and that was this kind of project to create a universal application layer.
Okay.
And they were going to do it, on top of various different network protocols.
So it was kind of like a common language that all the devices could speak?
Exactly, yeah. A universal translator for the smart home, if you will.
Okay.
And then later on, it sort of evolved into Cheap Play, which stood for Connected Home over IP.
Okay.
And that was, a very significant moment because that was when some of the big players like Apple and Google and Amazon really got involved.
Right. That's when it started to feel like, oh, this is actually going to be a thing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is going mainstream.
So then how did we go from Sheet T to Matter? When did that transition happen and what was driving it?
Yeah, so that was actually in 2022.
Okay.
The official shift to Matter happened, and a lot of things came together for that to happen. Google actually open sourced the Thread code in 2019.
Right.
Which I think was a big deal.
That's huge, yeah. Because then anybody can work with it, contribute to it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Potentially strengthen the security and all that.
And then, of course, the Zigbee Alliance, which was kind of the main player, they sort of rebranded themselves and became the Connectivity Standards Alliance, so the CSA. And so they kind of became this umbrella organization for all these different standards.
Okay, so they kind of decided, instead of competing, let's all just work together and make this a cohesive ecosystem.
Absolutely, yeah. And Silicon Labs, I think, have always been strong advocates for that.
Right.
That it wasn't about replacing Zigbee. It was about having the right tool for the job.
So Matter isn't meant to completely kill Zigbee.
Right.
It's just that Matter is the better tool for certain situations.
Right, absolutely, yeah. So, Matter is definitely ideal for these residential applications.
Okay.
But Zigbee is still out there, and it's still relevant for certain industrial use cases, for example.
So it's not a winner and a loser.
Right, exactly.
It's just, using the right tool for the job.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do Matter and Thread actually address those limitations that we talked about with Zigbee?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that they actually operate on different layers. So Matter is at the application layer, and Thread is at the network layer. So, Thread is kind of like, if you imagine like an orchestra.
Okay.
Thread is building the stage and providing the instruments.
Okay.
And then Matter is the conductor.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Making sure that everybody plays together nicely.
So Thread is providing this really robust network, and then Matter is making sure that all the devices are able to communicate with each other.
Exactly, yeah. So Thread, for example, it has this dynamic leader selection.
Okay.
And it supports multiple border routers.
Okay.
So that makes it inherently more reliable
Okay.
and scalable than Zigbee.
Okay, so this is really getting into some of those technical things that I think a lot of people are a bit confused about.
Yeah.
So explain this a little more. What is dynamic leader selection, and why are border routers so important?
Okay, so with dynamic leader selection, basically what happens is, let's say a leader node in the network fails.
Okay.
The network will automatically elect a new leader. So that ensures that the network continues to operate.
So there's no single point of failure.
Right.
Okay, so that's really good for reliability.
Exactly.
And then the multiple border routers.
Right. So border routers, they are essentially gateways between the Thread network and the rest of the world.
Okay.
So like your Wi-Fi, for example.
Okay.
And Zigbee, typically had a single gateway,
Okay.
which again, could be a bottleneck.
Okay.
But with Thread, you can have multiple border routers.
Okay, so that's like having multiple lanes on a highway.
Exactly.
So things can move more smoothly.
Exactly. Yeah. You can have more devices communicating simultaneously without things slowing down.
Okay, and all of this is made possible by, you mentioned earlier, that IPv6 foundation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So more addresses, more devices, more possibilities.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we've established that Thread is a pretty solid foundation
Absolutely.
for a smart home.
Yes.
But now let's talk about security, because that's a big concern for people.
Right.
How does Thread actually help to keep our smart homes secure?
Well, first of all, Thread uses very robust encryption and authentication.
Okay.
So, every message is basically wrapped in this unbreakable digital vault.
Okay, now you've got me interested. Tell me more about these unbreakable digital vaults.
So Thread uses AES 128 encryption,
Okay.
which is the same level of encryption that's used by banks and governments.
Wow, okay.
So you can rest assured that your data is being protected.
That's reassuring.
Yeah. It's like having a bodyguard
Okay.
for your smart home.
Okay, so it's not just anybody can just kind of jump on the network.
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay, and then what about, because we have to think about software updates, all that kind of stuff. How does Thread handle that in a secure way?
Yeah, well, thankfully, Thread supports secure over-the-air firmware updates.
Okay.
So that means devices can receive the latest security patches, bug fixes, all of that good stuff wirelessly.
Okay, that's good because, we hear about all these vulnerabilities and all that.
Exactly, yeah. You want to make sure things are up to date.
Okay, and one more security feature that I found really interesting was the idea of subnets.
Right, yeah.
So explain that to me a little bit.
So subnets allow you to basically create different zones within your smart home.
Okay.
So you might have a subnet for your living room devices, another subnet for your bedroom devices, and so on.
Okay.
And this allows you to isolate devices and control access a lot more granularly.
So it's kind of like, having different security clearance levels within your own house.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like having those firewalls within your smart home.
Okay, I like that. So if one part of the network is compromised, everything else is still protected.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You're containing the damage.
Okay, now all of this sounds really good, but if Thread is so amazing, why isn't everybody using it?
Well, it takes time for these things to really catch on. And Matter itself, which, relies heavily on Thread, is still relatively new.
Right.
And, a lot of manufacturers haven't fully embraced it yet, but it's getting there.
Huh.
And, you also have to think about all these legacy devices that people have already invested in.
Right.
They have Zigbee devices, they have Wi-Fi devices.
Right, we don't want to have to just throw everything out and start over.
Exactly. And thankfully, there are these bridges and gateways
Okay.
that can act as translators
Okay.
between the different protocols.
So you can still use your older devices,
Right.
but kind of bring them into this new world
Exactly.
of Matter and Thread.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here about Thread, how it builds that secure network. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about Matter.
Okay.
What are the specific benefits of having this universal application layer sitting on top of Thread?
Well, I think, one of the key things with Matter is it really acts as the glue that holds everything together.
Okay.
And it makes sure that all these different devices from different manufacturers can talk to each other and work together seamlessly.
So no more compatibility headaches.
Right. Yeah. No more, will this device work with that device?
Okay.
It's like having that universal translator.
Okay, that's what we all want, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We want everything to just work together.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, well, this is a great start. We've covered a lot of the technical details about how Matter and Thread work together.
Yes.
But in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to get into some of the more exciting stuff about how Matter is going to really transform our smart home experiences.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. we've laid the groundwork, talked about the network side of things with Thread, but now let's talk about what Matter brings to the table for the users. What's in it for us?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Like, how is this actually going to change my life in my smart home?
Okay, well, first of all, imagine setting up a new device, like a smart light bulb,
Yeah.
right? And it's just as easy as plugging it in and hitting a button on your phone. No more messing around with apps or trying to find your network password or any of that stuff.
That sounds like a dream. I mean, how many times have we all struggled with that?
Right. And because Matter is built on these open standards, you're not locked into one ecosystem anymore. You can mix and match devices from different brands. Choose the ones that you like the best.
Okay, so more freedom of choice, simpler setup, and everything just works together.
Exactly.
Okay, now give me some concrete examples. Like, how is Matter going to make a difference in specific areas of my smart home?
Okay, let's talk about energy management. Remember we talked about Thread being able to connect a lot of devices? Well, imagine your smart home integrating things like your smart thermostat, your EE charger, your solar panels if you have them, and all these devices are talking to each other, working together to optimize your energy usage.
Okay, now that's really interesting. So my house could automatically adjust the temperature, knowing when my solar panels are generating the most power, maybe delay charging my car until electricity rates are lower.
Exactly. So you save money and you're being more energy efficient.
Okay, so that's good for my wallet and good for the planet. I like that.
Right.
What about, like, controlling my smart home when I'm not even there?
Yeah.
Because, our phones are getting so powerful these days.
Right. Well, that's another big advantage of Matter. With phones potentially becoming border routers themselves, you could have seamless control over your smart home from anywhere in the world. Imagine you're on vacation and you can check your security cameras, adjust the lights, even preheat your oven all from your phone.
That would be amazing. No more worrying that I left the oven on or the lights on.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about the setup, the freedom of choice, energy management, remote control. What about the process of actually adding a device to the network? Because
Yeah.
with Zigbee, that could be a real pain sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Remember those long network keys you had to type in?
Yeah. And if you made one mistake, you had to start all over again.
Well, Matter has made that process a lot simpler and a lot more secure. It all starts with a QR code.
Okay, so I scan the QR code with my phone, and what happens then?
Your phone establishes a secure connection with the device using Bluetooth just for the initial setup. And then they exchange these digital certificates, like digital IDs.
Okay, so that makes sure that it's the right device connecting to my network.
Exactly. And it all happens behind the scenes. You don't have to do anything complicated.
Okay, so what about those multi-protocol chips that we hear about, like the ones Silicon Labs makes? Do they have a role to play in all of this?
Absolutely. Those chips are really important because they bridge the gap between the old and the new. They can switch between Bluetooth for the initial setup and then Thread for the actual network operation.
Okay, so I can still use my older Zigbee devices or my Wi-Fi devices.
Right. And they can all work together in this Matter ecosystem.
Okay, so it's not like I have to rip everything out and start over.
No, not at all.
I like that. It's all about creating a more harmonious ecosystem where everything can communicate.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of Matter. It's not about forcing everyone to switch overnight. It's about providing a path forward where we can all benefit from these advancements.
Okay, this is all starting to make a lot more sense now. It's not just about connecting devices. It's about creating a truly intelligent home that adapts to my needs, simplifies my life.
Exactly. And we're just scratching the surface here. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how Matter could transform our relationship with energy, our sense of security, and even our overall well-being.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the technical side of Matter and Thread, but now I want to get into the fun stuff. What are some of those cool features that are coming down the pipeline? What's going to make Matter really stand out?
Well, one thing that has me really excited is the potential for hyper-personalization. Imagine a home that actually learns your preferences, anticipates your needs. You wouldn't have to program a million different routines. It would just figure out, what you like.
Okay, so like I come home from work and the lights automatically dim, the fireplace turns on. It's like my house knows me better than I know myself.
Exactly. And it's not just about comfort and convenience. It can also be really helpful for things like accessibility, adjusting things automatically for people with disabilities.
That's a great point. And then you could have different profiles for different members of the family.
Yeah.
So the kids come home, the music changes, the lights come up. It's like the house is responding to each individual person.
Absolutely. I mean, think about how much data these companies already have about us. Now imagine applying that to our homes, creating a truly personalized experience.
That's kind of scary, but also really cool. But, okay, let's talk about security again for a minute, because that's something that a lot of people are concerned about with smart homes. We talked about Thread creating a secure network and Matter simplifying the setup, but how does this all translate into better security overall?
Well, one of the biggest benefits is that it's just harder to make mistakes with Matter. You don't have those complicated network keys to type in, so there's less chance of human error.
Right, because a lot of times security breaches happen because somebody just messed something up.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have all those encryption and authentication protocols that we talked about earlier. So your data is protected at every step of the way. And then, of course, you have the ability to create those subnets.
Right, those security zones within the house.
Exactly. So even if one device is compromised, the damage is contained. It's like having multiple layers of protection.
Okay, so that gives me a lot more peace of mind knowing that everything is being taken care of, from the network level all the way up to the individual devices.
Absolutely, yeah. Matter and Thread are working together to create a much more secure foundation for the smart home.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone through the technical stuff, the practical benefits. But as we wrap things up, I want to ask you, what is the ultimate promise of Matter and Thread? What does it all boil down to for us, the users?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's all about simplicity, right? It's about making our lives easier, more comfortable, more enjoyable. It's about creating homes that are truly intelligent, that adapt to our needs, that anticipate our desires. And I think Matter and Thread are really laying the groundwork for that.
I think you're absolutely right. It's about taking the frustration out of technology and making it work for us in a seamless and intuitive way.
Exactly. And the best part is this is just the beginning. I think we're going to see some amazing things happen as Matter continues to evolve.
I completely agree. This has been a fascinating deep dive, and I'm really excited to see where Matter and Thread take us in the future. Thanks for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Smart Home Tidbits. Join Sarah and John next time for more smart insights.